Okay, good evening everyone and welcome back to another week of our classes. We began last week speaking about the tragic passing of the 24,000 students of Rebbe Akiva. And we described the idea that they did not give each other the proper honor, discussed various understandings and explanations, how it could be that all 24,000 perished in such a short amount of time, relatively speaking. And at the end of the 33-day period of all of the deaths of the students, if you make the calculations, that mean that Rebbe Akiva had to bury over 800 students a day. That's over 800 funerals that he was attending. That means 800 shiva houses that he had to go to every single day. That means eulogies and giving comfort and consolation to the families who lost children, fathers, brothers, uncles, grandparents, and the like. Anyone that was one of his talmidim, his students. It was a very dark time in the history of Klal Yisrael, but perhaps it was even a darker time in the life of Rebbe Akiva. Who could imagine a man who lived his entire life, every essence of his being was for the Torah, to learn Torah, to teach Torah. He saw himself as a central figure in the dissemination of the Masorah, of our transmission to the next generation. And he certainly put in all of his blood, sweat, and tears and all of his effort into those students that he had. And at the end of 33 days, he walks into his Beis Midrash, into his yeshiva, and he looks around and it's deadly silent. You could hear more than a pin drop inside the walls of that study hall. And there was not a single one of his students that was left around. His entire life's work, his whole mission, everything that he believed in, that he put in his energies, had been destroyed in a short amount of time. You can imagine what they were saying on the streets about the yeshiva of the great Rebbe Akiva. Certainly not the place that you wanted to go and learn. Certainly didn't want Rebbe Akiva as your Rebbe, as your teacher, as your master. Look at the terrible, terrible luck and mazel that he has. Everyone that learns by him dies. And so we would certainly understand, and we could even appreciate, if after a lifetime's work, and then the tragic loss of all of his students, and Rebbe Akiva again having to go to funeral after funeral and shiva house after shiva house, and watching all of his students disappear one by one, we certainly would understand and we would not criticize Rebbe Akiva at all if at the end of 33 days, when the last of his talmidim, of his students, passed away, that Rebbe Akiva crawled into his bed, pulled the covers up over his head, left a note on his door that said, "Please do not disturb ever," and will never hear from Rebbe Akiva again. His whole life has just been destroyed in a short amount of time, which is one of the reasons, interestingly enough, that Lag BaOmer, which is coming upon us on Thursday night, is a day of celebration. Because on Lag BaOmer is the day that we say the last one of the students of Rebbe Akiva stopped dying. So there was nobody left to die. So I ask you a question, is that a day of celebration? The day in which Rebbe Akiva's final student passes from this world, do we call it, yay, let's celebrate? It is a morning after morning after morning. The Jewish people should not be able to pick themselves up. And yet we go out to the bonfires and we dance around and we sing and we praise Rebbe Akiva. What is the great praise? What are the songs? What is the revelry, the celebration, the simcha, the joy? Finally we can sing again, we can take haircuts again, we can trim our beards again, because no one's left to die. Rebbe Akiva, your life was just destroyed in a short amount of time. Why are we celebrating your destruction of life? So the Gemara deals with this because the Gemara would like to know also, well, what happened to Rebbe Akiva? He lost his yeshiva, he's got nobody left. I have a friend who, because of COVID, he had a shul in Manhattan, It was a very popular shul. They were being makarev. They were doing outreach to dozens and dozens and dozens of families. They were makarev maybe 100 families, keeping Shabbos, mitzvahs, sending their kids to Jewish schools. And it was in Manhattan, and as COVID hit, one after the other, people started getting COVID. Within the first month, several of his best balabatim passed from COVID. And as the lockdown continued in Manhattan, and a lot of his congregants did not like what was going on, they began exiting and migrating one by one from Manhattan. Till at the end of the whole ordeal, he was left with less than 10 congregants in his shul. And he had to close his doors for a long time. I heard, Baruch Hashem, he just now was able to open them up once again after almost over a year of desolation. So the Gemara tells us that Rebbe Akiva, after the students died, it was desolation on the earth. The future of Klal Yisrael, gone. The future Torah builders of the world disappeared. There's nobody left. Says the Gemara, what happened at that moment? So the Gemara tells us that ha'olam shamim, the world was desolate, it was shamim, it was silent. There was no learning that was going on. There were no talmidim, no students in the Beis HaMidrash. It was complete and utter silence, deafening silence. Ad sheba Rebbe Akiva etzel Rabbeinu shebedoraim, until Rebbe Akiva worked up the courage and the inner strength and the tenacity to pick himself up, and he traveled to the great rabbis who lived in southern Israel. V'shana lehem, and he began teaching them Torah once again. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, v'Rabbi Yosi, v'Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, v'Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, v'heim hamidu Torah oisei shah. And those 5 students, 24,000 to 5 students, those were the ones that he taught Torah to at that time, and they are the ones that carried on the mission and the legacy of Rebbe Akiva to the next generation. So the Gemara tells us one thing is clear. Rebbe Akiva did not throw in the towel. Rebbe Akiva looked around him, he saw all of the deaths, he saw his empty Beis HaMidrash, he saw he no longer has a yeshiva. How long did it take Rebbe Akiva to gather his strength together and make a decision to go and look for new students? That the Gemara doesn't say. It says until Rebbe Akiva went to the rabbis in the south and found 5 new students and began teaching them. But how long did it take Rebbe Akiva to muster up his strength, to lick his wounds, to stop feeling sorry and miserable for himself, for the failure that his life was? That he lost every single one of his students. You can't do better than that, Rebbe Akiva. How long did it take? Whatever it took, somehow Rebbe Akiva found inside of himself an inner strength to pick himself back up and say, I'm not going to quit. I am moving forward with Torah because it's been like that since we received it at Har Sinai. There's ups and downs, there's troubles, trials, and tribulations. The Torah is going to travel through all the different journeys that it will. This is just another one of those pathways. So we have 2 questions that we need to address tonight. Number 1, where did Rebbe Akiva get this strength to be able to restart his whole life, to rejuvenate himself, to believe in the authenticity and the glory of the Torah, that no matter what happened, even with all the mass destruction, I'm still going to make a run for it? And also, how long did it take Rebbe Akiva to lift up his spirits and get to that point that he was able to go and travel and find new students to teach over all of the Torah to, that they would end up being the link in the generation for all the generations of Torah to come. So I would like to do a study in the life of Rebbe Akiva. And we will see that we are talking about probably one of the most fascinating Torah personalities that the world ever saw before. I have maybe about 4 or 5 different sources that we're going to discuss tonight. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Chazal, our sages, spend a lot of time speaking about Rebbe Akiva. Because Rebbe Akiva is a model, he's an example to every single Jew in every single generation, no matter what it is that they are going through. And if we could be inspired by the life of Rebbe Akiva, if we could see the godless, the greatness of Rebbe Akiva, if we could appreciate what was inside the kishkas of Rebbe Akiva, it will make such an impression on us as well, that whatever a person is going through in their own personal life, the life of Rebbe Akiva, his conviction, his determination, his amun, his never ending, his unwavering amun, his faith, is something that will be able to carry us through whatever situation a person is trying to maneuver through in this world. So we would imagine that a person like Rebbe Akiva must have been someone that was from the greatest families in all of Klal Yisrael's history. He must have been, like they tell stories of the Vilna Gaon, when the Vilna Gaon was 3 years old, he was well versed in all of the Talmud already. I think that by the time that he was 5 years old, it is told over that he was already well versed in the Zohar, in the most Kabbalistic parts of our Torah as well. We would assume Rabbi Akiva, who was lauded as the greatest sage of that generation, certainly had the largest yeshiva, that is for sure, must be that he came from great stock, must be that he was, from the time that he was a child, called to become the next Gadol Hador, the leader of the generation. And this question is not my question or your question. This is the question in the Avos the Rebbe Nassan. And the Avos the Rebbe Nassan, one of our great statements or writings of our sages, asks the following question. It says, Mahaya Techilasa she Rebbe Akiva. What was the Techila, what was the beginning of Rebbe Akiva? Now, does it mean Matchilasa, what was the beginning, meaning when was he born? What was his childhood like? The Avos, the Rebbe Nassan, is going to go on to explain, we're not dealing with his childhood and his younger years, when he was a nice little cheder boy. We're not talking about that. As he explains, Rebbe Akiva, until the age of 40 years old, was an Amaretz Deraisa, which means he was a total ignoramus. He knew not an aleph from a beis, a pasuk, a verse in the Chumash. He didn't know a Mishnah, a page of Gemara. He knew nothing. He came from a very humble family that was not well known for their Torah knowledge. And when he was a younger man, he said about himself, I despise Talmidei Chachamim, the Torah scholars. If I would see them, I would bite them like a donkey. Asks his students, like a donkey, Rebbe? That's very harsh. A donkey has big, powerful jaws. If you'd bite somebody, you'd break their bones. Why didn't you say you'd bite them kekelev like a dog? He has little fangs, he'll pierce the skin, a little blood will come out. Rebbe Akiva said, no, you don't understand. I hated Torah scholars so much before I was one myself, that if I saw them, I would want to break their bones as a donkey would when he bites into a human bone. Rebbe Akiva is the shepherd of one of the richest men in all of Israel, Kalva ben Savua. And he has a daughter. Kalva ben Savua has a daughter, his name is Rachel. And she watches every day this shepherd boy go out into the fields, tend to the sheep, takes care of them, brings them here, brings them there, feeds them, waters them, makes sure that they're safe from all of the enemy, the wolves and the like. And there's some quality, the Gemara tells us, that she saw in this young shepherd boy that was very pleasing in her eyes. She saw that he had some midos malyusa, he had a very noble spirit. And behind her father's back, she one day calls over this young shepherd and she says, Akiva, you have made a very deep impression on me. Your midos, your character. your traits, the way you behave, the way you treat the animals, the care, the concern. I see you're a very gentle, sensitive, pure person. I'm going to make you an offer. And that is, marry me. I come from the wealthiest man in the world. That's my father. Marry me. And I will marry you, and I will be a devoted wife on one condition. You must agree to go to yeshiva and begin to learn Torah. Because I know and I believe in you that if you will begin to learn, you will transform from an ignorant young man to one of the greatest sages of our generation. My wealthy father will probably support you through kollel all of the years. You'll have nothing at all that you have to worry about. Akiva, please do me a favor. Marry me and become a great man. And Rebbe Akiva said, not a bad deal. Marry a nice rich girl, get a wealthy father-in-law, he'll pay for you to learn in kollel for 20, 24, 25 years, 30 years, become an outstanding rabbi. Sounds pretty good. She goes to her father and she says, Abba, wish me a mazel tov. Mazel tov for what? I'm a kala, I'm engaged. You're engaged? I'm working on a shidduch right now for you with one of the most prestigious young men in the yeshiva of Rav and Abayi. What do you mean you're engaged? I made my own shidduch. Who did you marry? Did the Rosh Hashiva's son came along? Who the leading rabbi of the town, his son came? Who are you marrying? She said, Akiva. Akiva who? Akiva Schwartz? Akiva Greenbaum? Which Akiva are you marrying? Akiva the Roya, Akiva the shepherd boy. What? The father says. Are you crazy? What are you talking about? She said, Abba, I love him with all my heart. He's such a special young man. He has a beautiful neshama. He's going to shine. He's going to bring you such joy. And Kalba ben Savua told his daughter, if you go through with this marriage, I will cut you off completely. You're not going to get a penny. And she said, I don't care. Because I believe in him. And I know that he could accomplish, and I know that he will achieve, and I know that he will outshine anybody else in this generation. I don't care about the money. She comes to Kiva, she says, I have bad news for you. My father's not so excited about this shidduch. He's going to let us get married. Oh, great. Baruch Hashem, says Akiva. The only thing is, he just cut me out of his will. I'm not getting a single penny. But still, I trust in you. I believe in you. Let's get married. And Akiva thinks for a moment. He thinks to himself that if this young lady from nobility, from the most chashiv, the most prominent of all families, believes in the koyach, in the potential that is inside of me, then I will believe in the potential inside of me as well. I don't need the money. Let us get married. And they get married in abject poverty, and she says, Akiva, Sheva Brachas is over, go and learn. 40 years old, never learned a drop before, knows nothing about yeshiva. He's on his way. Could you imagine all the doubts that are going through his head? Could you imagine when he's thinking to himself, is this crazy? Did I just marry the richest girl in the entire city of Yerushalayim, and her father cut us off, and I have to go learn now Torah and come back as a Talmud Chacham, as a Torah scholar? I maybe had ADD, maybe had ADHD, I don't know, maybe couldn't sit still. I have no idea what was going on in Rebbe Akiva's mind right now. I'm supposed to go, walk into a yeshiva, they're going to accept me, I'm not going to pass the test. I can't sit with men that are my age, 40 years old. These people have been learning for all their life. Who could imagine all of the doubts going through Rebbe Akiva's mind at that moment? And that's where the Avos the Rabbi Nosson picks up. Matchilasa she Rebbe Akiva. What happened to Rebbe Akiva on this walk? As he was contemplating his whole life, 40 years of ignorance, 40 years of hating Talmidei Chachamim, 40 years of being a simple shepherd, not knowing anything besides sheep and lambs. And now he's going to go and get involved in the most intricate profundities of wisdom of Torah? How's that going to work? Ask the Avos the Rabbi Nosson, Matechilasa she Rebbe Akiva, what happened on this walk that ignited the flame inside of Rebbe Akiva to realize you could do it, Akiva. Not only does your wife believe in you, you believe in yourself, you could accomplish, you could do, you'll become something that is more phenomenal and fantastic than you would ever dream of. So it tells us the famous story. Pamachas hayomer al pia be'er. As he was traveling to yeshiva somewhere, he's standing over a be'er, a well. And he looks inside of there and he sees that there is a rock. And in that rock, there is a hole. And he is amazed, how in the world is there a rock that has gone through that hole? There's no power drills from Home Depot during these days. How did the hole get inside of there? And he's looking around to try to figure it out. And he asks, Michakok Evin Zu, who made a hole in this rock? So there were some other people standing around the well and they said, Akiva, do you see that water? There's a little cleft over there in the rock above, and there's water that's dropping. Tip, tif, 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 as we say in Hebrew. Drip, drip, drip. It's been dripping so many billions of times, it made a hole inside that rock. And Rebbe Akiva stands there and takes that in. Water dropping on a rock thousands and billions of times makes a hole inside of a rock. Says Rebbe Akiva, Dan miyad, immediately. He was so inspired by this idea. Haya Rebbe Akiva dan kavachomer. Rebbe Akiva made a logical deduction to himself. And he said the following, Ma'arach psales akashe. Just like soft water it can make an indent, it can bear out a hole inside of something that is hard like stone, like a rock. So therefore, he says, the Torah, divrei Torah shekashe kebarzel, the words of Torah which are strong as iron and metal. So al achas kama v'kama, the more so, sheyichakaku as libi shubasa v'dam, will they make an engravement in my heart, which is made out of flesh and blood. Rabbi Akiva, there are so many pages of ink that are spilled upon explaining these words of Chazal. But Rabbi Akiva learned an important lesson that day. When the first drop of water dropped onto that rock, who knows how many hundreds, if not thousands of years before, did the first drop have any idea what is going to be in the end? No, the water is just dropping. And the second drop, and the third drop, and the fourth drop, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. But every drop is doing its job. It's just dropping onto the rock. Eventually, 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later, after 1 billion drops of water, it makes a hole inside the rock. The job of a person in this world, said Rebbe Akiva, is not to worry about what is the end result going to be. Nobody ever knows what the end result is going to be when they're in the moment right now. But rather the job of a person is just do what you're here to do. The water is here to drop on the rock, drop on the rock. What will be at the end? Nobody knows what will be at the end. I, Rebbe Akiva, am the beneficiary. I see 1,000 years later there's a hole in the rock. That means that if I'll go to yeshiva and I'll begin to learn Hashem's Torah, which is so powerful, I don't know where I'm going to end up at the end of 24 years. I don't know where I'm going to end up in the world of great Talmidei Chachamim. I don't know. My wife believes in me. I'll believe in myself. And I'll sit and I'll learn letter after letter, word after word, verse after verse, Mishnah after Mishnah, page of Gemara after page of Gemara. Until after 24 years in yeshiva, Rebbe Akiva ended up becoming, not sitting in the front row, he was teaching the Beis Midrash that was filled with the luminaries of that generation. And since this is really our Pirkei Avos year, I have to quote you a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And it says the following. It's the end of the 2nd chapter in Pirkei Avos tells us over the words like this. Lo yalecha hamalacha ligmor. Says the Mishnah, Rebbe Tarfon said, Lo yalecha hamalacha ligmor. It is not upon you to finish the job. However, v'lo ata ben chorin libatel mimenu, but you are not absolved from trying. What's going to be the end result? Not your business. As Rav Yisrael Salanter used to say, our job is to tuoif, is to do, and the uftu, what's going to be, that's up to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Your job is to do the gemar, the completion, the finish, what it's going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road, 1,000 years. That doesn't have to concern you. We just have to be like that water, constantly dropping day after day on that rock, doing our job. Today is one day, tomorrow's another day, now it's 1 year, now it's 2 years. Every day I'll do. Where's it going to get me? I don't know. I have a goal, I have a plan, I know where I'd like to get. Will I eventually get to that? I have no idea. That's up to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you give me the siyata d'shemaya to get to that place, I'll get there. If the heavenly providence is something else, then I'll get there as well. Rebbe Akiva was a man who tchilasa in his beginning, which catapulted him into the world of learning, was someone that recognized every day you try and you do, where you will end up, that's in the hands of Hashem. Many other things to tell us about Rebbe Akiva. The Gemara tells us, Gemara in Brachas tells us the following words. And that is, as the Gemara teaches us, that a person, la'olam, a person should always say over the following words. Chein Tana Mishmei de Rebbe Akiva, we learned in the name of Rebbe Akiva. La'olam ye adam ragil loimar. A person should always accustom themselves to say the following words. Kol the Dovid Rachmana, everything that the Rachmana, that the merciful one Hashem does, letav Dovid, it's all for the good. Everything that Hashem does in a person's life, everything, kol, everything without exception, it's all for the good, because the Rachmana, the merciful one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is doing it. And Rabbi Akiva, he shows this with an example, he illustrates this with a story that took place for him. He was coming into a town, and it was getting late at night, and he had no place to stay. And he's traveling with a donkey, with a chicken, and with a candle. And he's traveling along, and he's looking for an inn. It was COVID, and all of the hotels were closed. He had no place to go. So Rebbe Akiva goes and he knocks on the door. You imagine Rebbe Akiva, the great sage, knocks on your door at dusk, and he says, excuse me, do you happen to have an extra room that I could stay in? And he knocks on one door and said, oh, they barely opened the door. I'm sorry, we don't let guests in our house. I apologize. He goes to the door, oh, I wish I could help you, but you know what? My room is filled with other stuff right now. We don't have room. He goes another, they won't even open the door on him at all. Every single door that closes in his face, Rebbe Akiva says, Kol de Dovid Rachmana letav Dovid, everything that Hashem does, it's all good. It's all good. I might not know why, I don't understand, I can't see it right now. It's all good. Rebbe Akiva goes out into the fields. It was before California had $1 billion for the homeless cities, so he had to go out into the fields. He had no place to sleep. He goes into the fields over there, and he's got his trusty donkey, his chicken, and he has his candle. And there, by the candle's light, he's learning Torah. Oh, Baruch Hashem, he can learn Torah. A big gust of wind comes on, blows out the candle. Oh, he says, Rebbe Akiva, I can't learn, but whatever Hashem does, it's all good. But I still have my donkey and my chicken, at least I have that. I'll be able to travel in the morning, I have my chicken, I'll have some eggs for breakfast in the morning. Comes along a lion in the middle of the night and devours the donkey. Oh, he says, Rebbe Akiva, how am I going to travel tomorrow? No. Called the Dovid Rachmana letav Dovid, whatever Hashem does, it's all for the good. But at least I still have my chicken. I'll have some eggs for breakfast. Comes in the middle of the night, a fox comes sneaking along, devours the chicken. And Rebbe Akiva says, Kol Dovid Rachmanu L'Tavavi, whatever the merciful one does, all good. In the morning, Rebbe Akiva wakes up, and he travels into town all by himself. And as he sees the town that he tried to get a place to stay in the night before, he sees that there were a group of bandits that came through in the middle of the night. They ransacked the town, they killed people, they took their possessions. And Rebbe Akiva said, oh, Ribono Shel Olam, now I understand. Now I understand why you did. If they would have let me into the house to stay there, I would have been attacked by the bandits. If I would have had my candle in the field, they would have seen me when they were coming through to go attack the town. I would have gotten killed. If I would have had my donkey, it would have brayed in the night, it would have made noise, they would have caught me. If I would have had my chicken, it would have roosted in the morning, they would have caught me. So I see, really, as I said, Kol Dovid Rachmanu L'Tavavi, whatever happens, it's all for the good. I don't understand it at the time. I can't understand why me, the great Rebbe Akiva, they're not letting me into their house. Why Hashem doesn't want me to learn, why He takes away my transport, why He takes away my chicken, my food. But at the end of the day, it all works out for the best. You lose 24,000 students, 24,000, your life's work gone down the drain. And Rabbi Akiva said to himself, Adam la'olam, Adam rogel loime. A person always has to say the following words, Kol Dovid Rachmanu L'Tavavi, Ribono Shel Olam, it's all good. I thought that these were going to be the future leaders of Klal Yisrael. I thought I was putting in all my energies and all my efforts to make sure, to ensure the continuity of the Masorah, of the transmission that goes back to our Sinai. I thought I was doing that. But you have other plans, Hashem. And I have no questions on your plans. Because I know that whatever it is that you do, it's all the tav of it. It's all for the good. And therefore, I'm makabel, I accept it. What am I going to do with that? We don't know yet what Rebbe Akiva is going to do with that. The Gemara tells us another story with Rebbe Akiva. It's after the destruction of the second temple. And the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Gamliel, Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Rebbe Yeshua, Rebbe Akiva, Ma'alchim Baderech. The great sages, including Rebbe Akiva, they were traveling along the road. And they were coming into Yerushalayim after the destruction. And they could already see the clouds of smoke in the distance. They could see the ruins everywhere that they looked. What a sad day for the Jewish people. The great sages who were living in Jerusalem when there was a Beis HaMikdash, a temple. There was extra Kiddush in the world, all destroyed right now. They heard the sound of the Roman crowds that were gathering around, cheering for their victories. All of the rabbis began to cry. The Rebbe Akiva mesachik, and Rebbe Akiva started laughing. Laughing? The Beis HaMikdash is lying in ruins. The Romans are making victory chants, and they're heralding in the victory they had over the Jewish people. You be like the Rabbanan, you cry over such a tragedy. However, Rebbe Akiva mesachik, he was laughing. Amrulai, the Rabbanim said, Rebbe Akiva, why are you laughing at this time? This is tragedy. So he said to them, and you, why are you crying? They told him, these heathens, they bow down to idols. They burn incense to idolatry. And now they're living securely and calmly, and they destroyed our temple. Our temple's lying in ruins. And we shouldn't cry. We shouldn't weep at a time like this. Amalahem, Rabbi Akiva answered them, that's exactly why I'm crying. That's exactly why I'm laughing. Why? Because if this is the reward that people who transgress the will of Hashem receive. They're celebrating, they're victorious. They destroyed the Am HaNivcha, the chosen nation, and they took Hashem's house and they railed it down to the ground. So then, to those of us that do the will of Hashem, how much more so is Hashem going to reward us? Why are you crying? You're looking at the bad in front of you. But think what that means. If they are celebrating and we are mourning, imagine how much reward and how much energy and how much strength and how much elevation HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for us. And that's exactly why I'm laughing. Another time, these sages were traveling up to Yerushalayim and they saw the Beis HaMikdash lying in ruins. And when they reached Had Tzofim, the Mount of Tzofim, they tore their garments, which is the halacha. When you see the Beis HaMikdash lying in ruins, you have to tear kriya. It's mourning for the Jewish people. Rosh Shual, when they reached the Temple Mount, they saw a fox running out of the Holy of Holies, the holiest place in the temple, where the Kohen Gadol would go only one day a year on Yom Kippur to do the precious service of Yom Kippur. They suddenly see a fox running out on that Holy of Holies. And once again the rabbis began to wail and to cry and to mourn. The Rebbe Akiva mitzachek, and Rebbe Akiva is laughing. Fox running out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Gewaldig, he says, incredible. On Malay they said, Rebbe Akiva, how could you be laughing at a time like this? On Malay they said to him, why are you crying? And they told him, because there's a pasuk that says that anyone that's not a Kohen cannot go into the Holy of Holies. And now there's a fox that's running out of the Holy of Holies? How can we not cry? That's total destruction. So he said, that's exactly why I'm laughing. And he goes on to explain that there are two nevuas, two prophecies that was always bothering him. One is Uriah Kohen, and the other one is Zakaria. And it says over here, what's the connection between Uria and Zakaria? And is it Uria b'migdash Rishon and is Zakaria b'migdash Sheni? Uria is a prophecy about the first destruction, and Zakaria is a prophecy about the second destruction. And he says, what's the connection? And he says like this, because by Uri it says, the fields are going to be plowed, and the Beis HaMikdash are going to be destroyed. However, it says by Zakaria, it says eventually the elders and the children and everyone's going to return to the streets of Yerushalayim once again. Says Rabbi Akiva, until the prophecy of Uriah came true, which meant that the Beis HaMikdash was going to be destroyed, I was concerned that maybe the prophecy of Zechariah would not come true, that it's going to be restored and returned to Yerushalayim. But now that I see that the prophecy of Uriah has come true, that the Beis HaMikdash is lying in rubble, I now know that the prophecy of Zechariah is going to come true. The Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. And therefore, that is why I'm laughing and that's why I rejoice, because I know that what you think that you see is bad, it's really a sign of the good that is about to come. The rabbi said to Rebbe Akiva, Akiva nichamtanu, you have comforted us, Akiva. You gave us nechama, you comforted us. Rebbe Akiva lived a life, not a life where he saw tragedy in front of him, not a life where he got agitated and upset and angry about these situations that were out of his control. Rebbe Akiva lived a life where he believed with all of his heart, called the Ovid, Rachmana Letav Ovid, everything that Hashem does is for the good. And even if we don't understand right now, we have to know that that which we are going through is just a preparation for the ultimate good that is going to come to our lives. And therefore he laughed, because he realized, if such terrible things are happening, I'm certain that such amazing and wonderful and good premonitions and prophecies are going to come true as well. This is Rebbe Akiva. And this is the Rebbe Akiva who was standing at that precipice in his life when his entire life's work was destroyed, when he lost every single one of the Talmidim of his students, and he did not know what he's going to do. And the Gemara tells us, Ad shebo l'Rabbeinu shebedorim, until he came to the rabbis in the south, and he found 5 students, and he began teaching them all the Torah. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, what was the day that Rebbe Akiva gathered himself together, garnered in strength, put his emunah and all of his life's work into perspective, and he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm with you. I'm like the water dropping on the rock. I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going. Because I believe that even though in front of me I see destruction, from the destruction, you're going to rebuild Klal Yisrael. How long did it take Rebbe Akiva to accomplish that? Says the Zohar, on the exact day Lag BaOmer, which was the day that the last one of his students died and left this world, and he had nothing left to look forward to in his Beis Midrash, Rebbe Akiva didn't go into his bed. He didn't walk around Yerushalayim feeling sorry for himself and saying, what a failure I am, how could I have done this? Rebbe Akiva on that day got up with his determination, with his integrity, with his emunah, with his belief, with his trust in Hashem, with his understanding that things are not always as they seem to be, and Hashem is preparing something better for the future. And he traveled on Lag BaOmer, and he went to southern Israel, and he found the 5 greatest sages of the generation, amongst them Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And he began teaching them Kol HaTorah Kula, everything new, everything fresh. And from those 5 students comes Kol HaTorah Kula, all of the Torah in our transmission, in our chain, in our legacy of the Torah that we received from the previous generations that takes us back to our Sinai. It all happened on Lag BaOmer. Rebbe Akiva did not give up. Rebbe Akiva did not wallow around. Rebbe Akiva did not complain. He didn't kvetch. He didn't say, why me, Rebbe? He said, Kol Dovid, Rachmana Letav Ovid, whatever you do, it's good. I know that you don't do bad. So you must want Torah to look some other way. You must want other sages to be the ones that are going to bring the Torah to the next generation. It wasn't supposed to be these students. Someone else is going to be mechadish to reveal to us the secrets of the Zohar, the Kabbalah. Somebody else will give it over to our children. Somebody else. Says Rebbe Akiva, I'm not stopping. You don't stop, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are always there. You are constant. You never slow down. I'm not going to slow down either. I'm going to keep going. And he goes on that day, Lag BaOmer, and that's the celebration. The celebration is the celebration of the spirit of Klal Yisrael, the sparks of Kedusha, of holiness, the fires of our neshama that are ignited inside, that even in the darkest moments of our history, personal lives, historically, as a nation, Rebbe Akiva taught us, you never let the fires burn out. The embers are always flaming and burning. And in that way, no matter what's going on, you're always moving forward in life with emunah, with security, with trust, with belief in yourself and belief in Hashem, you will accomplish. You will do. You don't know what the end result's going to be. But we leave that up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lo alecha malacha ligbor. It's not upon you to finish the job, but you're not a ben chor and libantum. You're not free to exempt yourself and absolve yourself from it. You got to try. And if you try, says Rebbe Akiva, you will certainly accomplish. And this is really the final moments in the life of Rebbe Akiva's life. Rebbe Akiva, as we know, was taken in on charges by the Romans because he was doing the most horrendous and atrocious of crimes we could imagine. He was teaching Torah to the Jewish people. And in the eyes of the Romans, that was a terrible, terrible sin. Because as our enemies of all generations understand, the battery pack, the energy, the confidence of Klal Yisrael as a nation always comes when we are learning together ba'achdus as one, when we are dipping into the waters of our Mesorah, of our legacy, of our heritage, of our eternal link to the Ribbono Shel Olam. And the Romans, like every other one of the enemies that has ever risen up against us, their mission was remove the Jews from the Torah, and then we will be able to conquer them and destroy them. And yes, Rabbi Akiva tells over the famous mashal, the parable, just as the fish cannot exist outside water, so too the Jewish people cannot exist outside the waters of Torah, just like a fish will flip and flop on the dry land. And then they will die. The Jew that is outside the waters of Torah, he might flip and flop, he might look like he's alive, but the spiritual death is insurmountable what he is going through. So therefore he was taken as one of the martyrs of the Jewish people to be killed, and we read about his death on Yom Kippur, we read about his death on Tisha B'Av, to inspire us to what it means to be a Yid, to be a Jew who never gives up his faith in the constant continuity and the eternal link that we have of Torah and of mitzvahs for all generations. And the Gemara tells us about Rebbe Akiva in his final moments, as he's being schlepped out by the Romans, and his Talmidim, his students, are watching in horror. Rebbe Akiva, the great Rebbe Akiva, who taught us all of the Torah, who showed us what it means to be a Yid of Amunah, who showed us no matter what happens in one's life, you never slow down, you never stop. You believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all good. Even if it looks dark in front of you, we know it's for the best. Now they're schlepping Rebbe Akiva out to kill him. And the Gemara tells us, Bisha sho'itzias Rebbe Akiva l'hariga. At the time that they were taking Rebbe Akiva out to be killed, Zman Kri Shema. It was time to say the Shema. V'hayusorkim es besaro b'misrakei shel barzel. And they were combing his skin with metal combs. They were ripping his skin off. Who could imagine the pain that he was going through? Vayemekabel alav o malchus shemayim. But at that moment, as they were ripping his skin off, and they were killing his body, at that exact moment he realized that it was time to say Shema, and he accepted upon himself the yoke of heaven. Omulei Talmidov, his students are standing there, and they said, Rabbeinu, Ad Kan, even now you're saying Shema, you're dying, Rabbeinu, you're leaving this world, you're saying Shema. Amalehem, Rebbe Akiva answered to them, who could imagine the presence of mind in the great Rebbe Akiva, his body's being thrashed to shreds, and the students are asking, what are you doing? And Rebbe Akiva answers with such calmness the following words, Kol yomai hayisi mitztayr al pasuk zeh b'chol nafshecha. All of my life, I was always concerned about this pasuk in Shema that says you have to be willing to give up b'chol nafshecha, all of your soul to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Afilu noitelish nishmascha. Even if they're taking away your soul is being extracted from your body. You have to be able to accept upon yourself the yoke of heaven. Amarti, I said to myself, Masai yovai liyondai v'kamena. When will I have a chance, said Rebbe Akiva, to fulfill the words of the Torah that says, even if your soul is being taken away, I accept your sovereignty, Hashem. V'achshav sheba liyodi. And now that I have the opportunity, lo yakamenu, I shouldn't fulfill the mitzvah of giving up my entire neshama to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Hayamarich be'echad. He said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And he lengthened the word Echad one. At Yitzasa Nishmasai be'echad. His neshama left him with the word one, Echad. Yitzasa Baskoil, a heavenly voice rang out in the heavens. V'amr, and it said, Ashrecha Rebbe Akiva. Fortunate are you, Rebbe Akiva. Sheyatsa nishmasecha be'echad, that your neshama left this word with echad, with one. Said Rebbe Akiva, it's all one. It's all one, Ribbono Shel Olam. What's good is good, what's bad is bad. No, it's all one, says Rebbe Akiva. It looks like it's bad, it's all good. It looks like the water's doing nothing, it's making a hole inside the rock. It looks like people won't let me into their house. It doesn't matter, that's what Hashem wants. I lost 24,000 students, says Rebbe Akiva. It's all echad, it's all one. So I should get to the new Talmidim over there in Durham in the south and be able to build the Torah once again. Ashrecha Rebbe Akiva. Fortunate are you, Rebbe Akiva. Yatsa nishmascha be'echad. Your neshama left you because you understood. It's all echad. It's all one. And this is Rebbe Akiva's life. Everything is one. There's no dispersion. There's no dissonance. There's no disconnect. Everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu call, everything is the latav of it. Is all for the good. The Beis Hamikdash lying in ruins, Rebbe Akiva is laughing because that means it's going to be rebuilt. There's a rock with water, Rebbe Akiva is mesmerized. Then the Torah is going to make an imprint on me. Rebbe Akiva is dying, and Rebbe Akiva says, no, this is exactly what I was living for all my life, for this exact moment. So I could accept the sovereignty of the kingdom of Hashem on me, and say, Echad, you're all one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the simcha of Lag BaOmer. The simcha, the joy, the radiance, the excitement. It's more than just dancing and hot dogs and marshmallows and all the other stuff that goes on over there. It's much deeper than that. It's the deepness of the fires that are there inside the neshama of Klal Yisrael, of the masses of our people, of our nation. But most importantly, we have to find that which is inside of ourselves. And if we will find this koyach of Rebbe Akiva, we'll see the glory and the splendor and the might and the power that Rebbe Akiva left over to us. That this is what a Jew could accomplish. This is where a Jew could reach in their life, no matter what is going on. It looks bad, it's all echad, it's all one. It's all good. Just keep going and don't stop and don't give up and don't lay down in bed and don't pull the covers over yet. Just keep going forward. Because if you do, then as Rebbe Akiva taught the world on that day of Lag BaOmer, if you want to fulfill the will of Hashem, if you want to teach Torah to the next generation, if you want to live your life that's going to be a nachas, a pleasure in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, He will give you the siyata d'shemaya, the heavenly assistance to be able to accomplish. You lose 24,000, you gain 5 new students. And in those 5 new students, today, this year, is in their schus, in their merit. For had it not been for Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, and the other 3 great Tanoim of that generation, we would not still be learning Torah's Hashem Temima, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. May we be Zeiche to see and to find the sparks of Kedusha that are inside of ourselves. May we learn from the lifetime of a Rebbe Akiva, a lifetime that was never daunted, was constantly climbing and growing and moving forward, even in the face of adversity. Never giving up, even when there was darkness that was all around him. Laughing, even when it looked like there was destruction. And unifying his neshama with the Ribbono Shel Olam, even in the final moments of his precious life. If we'll find those sparks inside of us, then whatever it is that we need in our lives, whatever darkness we have to climb out of, whatever challenges we have to overcome, whatever fires we need to stoke in this world, and whatever accomplishments are still waiting in the wings for us to reach, in the schus of the Tana Rebbe Akiva, in the merits of this great man who left over so many wellsprings of wisdom and of messages for us to learn from, we continue to live until this day. May we carry on his message brighter, brighter, brighter in every generation. And may we be zeicha to live our life, not Rebbe Akiva had to die be'echad with one. May we live our lives be'echad with one, recognizing it's all one, it's all the Ribbono Shel Olam. And in that schus, as Rabbi Akiva said, there's nothing to cry about, only to laugh. Because just as the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, we now know that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. Bimheira v'yameinu. You're welcome. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a great week.
Amen. You too.